The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Lauren Lavine. Many of you know me as the Digital Dentist. I wanted to welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. We've got a really good topic tonight, I think. We had close to 200 people that registered for the webinar, and a good chunk of people are already in here now. I'm only going to speak for a couple of minutes tonight. I want to make sure that our speaker, Cheryl, has as much time as she would like to speak throughout the webinar. For any of you who have not been on past webinars, the format's going to be very similar. Cheryl's going to talk for as long as she needs to talk, which I understand is not going to be horribly long tonight, probably 30 to 40 minutes. She probably is not going to be able to get to any questions during her presentation. I'm the only one that can actually see the questions. But if you have a question, go ahead and type that question in as you think about it. You probably won't be, as I said, we probably won't get to them until the end. We certainly have left enough time that we're going to get to any questions that are asked. So go ahead and just, as you think of it, type it in. I'll make sure that we get to those questions, as afterwards she's done speaking. We are able to provide continuing education credits tonight. Cheryl's company, Maxim, has been kind enough to sponsor that. So all of you will be sent information about those CE forms as well. We also understand that sometimes people can't stay towards the end of the webinar. That's okay. We are recording this entire webinar, both the audio and the video. So within the next day or so, you should be getting a link that will allow you to download and view the webinar at your convenience. I also upload all of the webinars to my website at thedigitaldentist.com. There's a little link there, I think, for videos or webinars or something like that. So it's not that hard to find it. We have the last 70 or 80 or so that we keep on file up there. As I said, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren Lavine. As I said, many people have known me throughout the years as the Digital Dentist. What I've tried to do over the last number of years is present webinars that I personally think are just interesting to people. They may not be into my area of expertise, and tonight's topic certainly falls into technology. Really, the focus of these courses is to provide content I think is interesting, stimulating. It's sometimes controversial, but that's okay. But at the end of the day, if you get some nuggets or pearls of wisdom out of these webinars, then in my mind it was worthwhile. And I think we're going to hit on hopefully a lot of those bases this evening. Now, when we're talking about selling your practice in the next few years and how to really generate income from that and why this is important, it's not really, as I said, my area of true expertise. What I have found is that there certainly are a number of practice management consultants out there who talk about practice transitions and understanding how to use software. In my mind, and certainly in talking to a lot of the consultants that I know out there, many of them have had former careers working for practice management software companies. Because really, if there's any company that understands the true value of what your software can provide for the practice and getting information out of the practice as far as financials and being able to sell it at the right price and being able to find hidden treatment and all the things that are really critical for a modern practice. In my mind, the people that really understand the software, that develop the software, are as qualified as anyone to do that. And certainly tonight, we have someone who I think really fits that bill as well, and that's Cheryl Kanhai. Cheryl is president of Maxim Software Systems. And I should mention, by the way, I do webinars for a lot of companies, and what I enjoy being able to do for almost all of them is to have an arm's length relationship. I know Maxim Software. We have been installing and working with their clients for a number of years. They started up in Canada. They're in the States now as well. And I like the company. I like the product. But as a disclaimer, I do not work for any of these companies. I'm not here as a sales rep. I don't make any money or additional monies if you end up buying the software or using their programs. I'm here to educate. I told Cheryl I want to make sure that tonight's content is educational nature, and I think she's done a great job with that. I've had a chance to review the webinar. But she's president of Maxim Software Systems. They've been making the Maxim practice management software. She's been with the company for about 15 years, and she started off as a sales rep. She rose to sales manager, to general sales manager, and then she took over the company about 3 years ago. And over the past 15 years, she's advised well over 1,000 dentists on how to implement dental software systems to improve office efficiencies, increase productivity, and boost income, which I think is really critical for everyone. Her dedication to the company and its clients means that she spends a lot of time and a lot of energy to provide new products and services, to enhance dental offices, and she continues to maintain close contact with, their developers, their software developers, and their users to ensure that everyone's happy with the system. She really is a recognized subject matter expert, and she plays a key role in driving her company forward and tries to keep Maxim moving into the future as well. So I'm going to turn the mic and the screen over to Cheryl. Cheryl, we're certainly looking forward to tonight's presentation, and take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Lauren, for that introduction. That was very, very nice. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's webinar. Today's subject is selling your practice in the next 10 years. But as Lauren was kind enough to say, being in the practice management software business, we get to know all of the details and the ins and outs of dental practices, the data that's accumulated, and the value of it, and areas that practices are missing today. And this is exactly what today's webinar is about. So as Lauren kindly mentioned, I am the company president. I've been with them about 15 years. I'm now the new owner, and I have my own story to tell you. I've gone through the purchase just in the last few years, and I've gone through a transition. So I can tell you personally what the experience has been like. And also today, we'll talk about the study of trends, which is something that a lot of dentists that are looking to sell, I will call them sellers in this webinar, that they don't know, and I'm here to educate you. So I'm going to start off with a real-life story. I've got I'm just using first names. So I've got Dr. Jim selling his practice. Dr. Sam wants to buy it. Broker A uses the formula that undervalues the practice. Dr. Jim, the seller, has stopped the sale. So what do you think the seller is going to do? Today, he is looking at adding technology into the practice to help establish the real value of the practice. Today, that's what we're going to be talking about. Here's a trend. Sellers are selling their practices for far less than what they're actually worth. That's very important. Sellers do not know that brokers are undervaluing the practices using their traditional methods. Sellers and brokers do not know that there's better ways of establishing a valuation. There's a lot of income potential that is hidden in the practice, and it's not considered at the time of the sale. That's very, very important. You also have to note it's no fault of the broker, because they have no easy way of getting that information. So they already use easy information, and I call that easy information, such as your billing, your payments, the type of dentistry that you do, your active patient counts, look at your expenses and the net profit of the practice. But there's so much more that's being missed. Sellers do not know what buyers are looking for. That's another key trend. Sellers want to leave the practice technology improvements to the buyer. That's a very important point to make here. Sellers also don't know what tools are available to help them improve the practice. And technology today is playing a part in dental offices in ways that it's never played before. So if you're looking to sell your practice, do you know what buyers are looking for? Well, I do, and this is exactly the information that I'm going to share. So when I started in dentistry, I started in sales. And in the past 15 years, I've risen through the ranks. In the past year, so this information is current, in the past year, I've taken the time to meet and greet dentists, both buyers and sellers. And being curious, I walked around dental meetings and profiled dentists, and I looked at their age and their gender, and that's how I qualified them. So I approached several of the younger dentists, and I've asked them, and I just struck up a conversation and asked them, so what are you looking for when you're buying a dental practice? I'm curious. who do they rely on to teach them how to manage a practice? Another good question. And how would you go about finding a dental practice for sale? Those are three pretty easy questions. So here are the answers I received. What are you looking for when you're buying a practice? They're looking for a ready-to-move-in practice to start working and earning. Now think about when you started practicing dentistry years ago. You wanted to get in and start working. That's exactly the same predicament that they're in now. They don't want to find a fixer-upper and spend years and money and time fixing it up. Who do they rely on, or who do they want to rely on to teach them how to manage a practice? They would rely on the previous dentist to be their mentor. Key word there is mentor, to teach them the ropes about practice management. Some of the respondents also said that they would also ask friends, but that wouldn't hold too much water, only because most of their friends are the same age or have the same level of experience, which is really very little. I'm just going to go to the next slide. How would you find a dental practice that's for sale? They said they'd buy the office where they associate in, or they go to a broker. And brokers are like real estate agents. They want to bring buyers and sellers together. They want to make the deal as quickly as possible and move on to the next. They don't really care about the details. They're in there to do a specific job, and they get it done. So what does this all mean to you? You need to make your practice attractive to the buyer. The younger dentist, you have to make your practice attractive to them. You need to give buyers what they're looking for. You need to find a way to get top dollar, and most of all, you need to be willing to be the mentor. Now let's just take a moment to stop and think about what your staff does every day. They pull the charts, they write in the information of whatever happened today, the occurrence of today for that particular patient, and they file the chart away. If you probably have thousands of charts, and if you have thousands of charts, you have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in them. Let me repeat that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in them. So let's take a moment to stop and think about what's in those charts. Obviously today's treatment, today's chart notes, that's pretty straightforward. Future treatment that's required, next appointment that's required, next recall or recall date that's required, today's charge and payments, that's a given. But you can multiply this information times 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, or more based on the number of charts that you have. You've got all of this information sitting in your wall of charts in your filing cabinets, not being attended to. So I want you to take a moment just to close your eyes, if you will, and picture your filing cabinet. Just imagine your filing cabinet at this very moment. So imagine if you can actually take that filing cabinet and plug it into something like a computer, and it could talk to you. What do you think it would say? If you think about it, it would tell you what's buried in them, what treatment or recall is sitting unattended. And that very same computer, you can generate reports and information to see this information sitting in those files. Furthermore, you can actually use that computer to put a dollar figure to it and have the system tell you the value of the unattended treatment in your charts. This is key. So what is this worth to you? More importantly, what's this worth to the buyer? And this here's the gold mine that we're talking about. You'd actually be astonished to see how much potential income is hidden inside of them. And what's worse is I call this area, this filing cabinet, Never Never Land, because that's where everything's filed away. It's filed away in Never Never Land. And when you put a price on your practice today, you're including the value and the assets in your practice. You're including whatever's in Never Never Land in the purchase. And you're actually giving away those assets away for free, and this could amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to go back to that phrase, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So today's perspective is a fresh perspective. In today's modern practice, the practice will be called a data-driven practice. That's going to be a term that you're going to hear us talk about today and in the future, as when all of your information about your practice, and I say all of your information about your practice is in a computer, you're going to have the power of using this data to drive your practice forward. Now, when I first started, there was lots of offices operating on paper. Now, if you remember those days, those were the days of several appointment books for each provider. The ledger ruled. Claim forms were written by hand. Receipts were written by hand. The calculator and eraser was as important as the telephone. The recall cards were filed by month, and you just pick up the month and drop that in the mail. If you remember those days, those were the days of paper-bound practices. Today, it's much different. You have to realize that today's practice is moving into a data-driven world, and you have to also realize that half of your practice is on paper. That half is your charts. So what exactly does data-driven mean? Data-driven means that there is an electronic system, like software, that extracts and compiles the information and puts them into actionable reports. I'll just give you a minute just to read that again so it sinks in. Now, if we were talking clinically, this would be similar to evidence-based dentistry, where you would have data to present to the patient about their particular treatment. And in this particular case, in this context, this is real data that you're going to provide to your potential buyer. What this also means is when it's time to sell your practice, you have hard data about your practice so you can establish its real value. The power of the data, this is important. You can actually, just picture yourself handing the new buyer a listing of the patients, those same patients that you've cared for years, but you're handing them the list of patients that need treatment. This information makes buying your practice a no-brainer because the owner doesn't have to sit there and figure out which patients need treatment and which ones they should see first. It's really very straightforward. If you really think about it, that is the new doctor's or the new buyer's to-do list, or I would say to-treat list. Again, this list could be valued at several hundred thousands of dollars, and I have actual numbers here to show you. Just give me a minute. I'll give you just a few minutes to read this particular screen, because this is true information and true data that we have. As you can read from the bottom up, so an office with 1,000 patients had $300,000 sitting in treatment plans. And treatment plans, so this is just the doctor side. This is not recall and hygiene at all. This is strictly treatment plans. So how much hidden treatment is sitting in your paper charts? I'm going to make a quick introduction on Maxident. So as Lauren kindly said, we've been in the dental software business for 35 years. Dental software only. We have expertise in startups, takeovers, buys, sells, transitions, multiple locations, multiple disciplines. Maxident is a state-of-the-art software program. When we're talking about technology, we're talking about computers, X-ray, software, and more importantly, we're talking about the leadership to guide you through this. Now, you have to realize something. You guys have computerized once before in your career. So doing this, again, should be really easy the second time around. And as you know, if you think about when you computerized 10 or 20 years ago, it worked marvelously for the last 10 or 20 years. For these next 10 to 20 years, you really have to put the focus on getting technology in your practice to resell it for the future. Let's get back to the business side of the practice. There are only three main income streams which you've got to focus on, and Maxident identifies them. We've actually taken these systems, developed them, and made them really, I would say, we've dumbed them down to make a really very straightforward, easy-to-use software program. Treatment plans. Maxidents never lose a treatment plan system. This part's for the dentist. It captures all your treatment plans. It gives your staff the ability to instantly find treatment plans using our industry first, aged treatment plan report. Now, if you think about it, you have an aged AR report today in your existing software program, but no other software program out there has an aged treatment plan report. This is something that I coined, and we built that into Maxident. So you can have a list of all treatment plans. All software programs have that, but what Maxident has, it actually ages it. So if you can show the new buyer how many treatment plans you have that are 2 years and under, 4 years and over, and those are typically lost treatments, lost opportunities. So he can really focus, or he or she can really focus on the current treatment plans. You can recall patients with treatment plans without scheduled appointments. That's key. But the most important part is you have the tools with our system, our Maxident's Never Lose a Treatment Plan system, to convert those treatment plans into production. The second part is Maxident's Never Lose a Patient Recall and Appointment system. This part's for the hygienist. So you've got all of the tools to fill her chair weeks and months in advance by using our unscheduled appointment system. You can track your 3-month, 6-month hygiene visits, exams, whatever you wish. But what's key with our Never Lose a Patient system is that it even tracks patients who have fallen through the cracks and out of rotation. Really very straightforward. So the treatment plan and the recall system are two clinical systems. So it's clinical, and this part here, the third part, is Maxident's Never Lose an Insurance Approval system. So you've got clinical tracking systems, and this is how you're going to get paid for it. Really very simple. So captures insurance approvals and easily identifies patients with insurance approvals on file. It tracks patients that have insurance approvals but no scheduled appointments. See that gap? And it also converts pre-approved insurance into production. Really very straightforward. And these three systems are called Maxident's Never Lose an Income Stream Management System. Never lose an income stream management system. Key. So to sort of get into the summarized area of this presentation, you need to make the technology improvements today, not put it off for the new buyer. They want to, again, buyers want to move in and start working right away. I will explain to you the "it will cost you twice" formula. So if you have a practice that is, let's take a moment and fast forward 5 years. So right now, at this very moment, you have a high income practice. It's up for sale. You've modernized it. You have a 5-year track record to prove it. You've got financial statements in hand, and you've really made it a no-brainer to buy. But in your mind, right now, I bet you that most of you are thinking, well, what happens if the buyer doesn't like the X-ray brand that I chose, or the computers that I chose, or the color on the walls, or anything like that? To me, that doesn't matter. You're selling a high-income practice. If they want to make any changes, let them change it on their dollar. But you've made your practice very attractive to buyers. So let me explain the "it'll cost you twice" formula, and I'll put it to you in simple terms, straight line accounting, nothing fancy here. Say today the value of your practice was worth $900,000. It'll cost you $100,000 in your practice to modernize it. That, again, is digital X-ray, computers and software and training and data conversion and backups and all of that. So in effect, straight line accounting says your practice is worth $1 million. But say you didn't invest the $100,000 into your practice. Say you didn't because you wanted to put it off to the buyer. And the selling price of your practice is $900,000. The buyer's going to come in and say to you, well, look, it's going to cost $100,000 to modernize this practice. I want $100,000 off the selling price. And in fact, you're going to get $800,000. That's the "it'll cost you twice" formula. You're going to pay for it either way. You have to also understand that what brokers do is they calculate your income track record in the past 5 years. So if you have mediocre income for the past 5 years, you're going to get a mediocre selling price. Again, really very straightforward. Brokers will also do a spot check on your charts because they do realize that there's value in there, but there's no easy way of calculating it. So what do? They pull a bunch of them, they list it out, and they take an average. An average. That's not good. They'll also look at your hard assets, your equipment, any improvements that you've made in the past few years and see what the value of that is. Again, taking an average of the treatment that's sitting in your charts is not a good plan at all. So what you need to do to get top dollar is boost your income track record to its peak at least 5 years before you sell, because they're going to take the last 5 years of reports, financial statements. You need to know exactly how much gold is hidden in your charts. You want full value of that diagnosed treatment, not an average. Remember, that's treatment that you diagnosed, saying that your patients need. And every dollar counts. And that's a fact. So here I'll tell you another story about me being the succession plan for Maxim Software Systems. I've been with the company 15 years. Company's been around 35. The founder is much like you, the principal dentist today, and I'm much like the associate. So I'm going to kind of bring this in terms and kind of make it real life for you. So the founder had reinvested in the company. He's upgraded the technology, which is why I can say to you today, max it into state-of-the-art technology, because we truly are. He had reinvested the technology to make the company attractive, because if I was going to buy it, somebody else was. Clearly, right? He made it attractive for any buyer to buy. So me working with the company, I knew exactly what the company was worth. I mean, I was the one that helped build it for what, 13 years prior to me buying it. So had he not made those investments, I would have been in the position to negotiate the price down. And that's exactly what I'm saying to you today. The buyer is, by not making any improvements to your practice, you're giving the buyer the power to negotiate and nickel and dime the price down, which is not good for you. So what I'm saying to you is when you're selling, you need to know what you're selling, and when you're buying, you need to know what you're buying. It's good for dentists today to have an exit strategy. You have to get your headspace out of owning a dental practice. You have to present your practice as a business. You also have to recognize that the new buyer isn't buying you, they're buying the value of the practice. Therefore, modernizing your practice must be part of the strategy to get top dollar. I personally think that you want your last 10 years to be your glory years. Remember, you computerized once before. It's really nothing for you to computerize the second half of your practice today. The sooner that you talk to us, the better it is. Don't be shy or procrastinate, because, again, the years go by really fast. There's no worries. I have a team here that I've handpicked to make sure that they'll transfer your data into Maxident. They will train your staff. Most importantly, they will train your staff to get your practice to be that high-income practice, to make sure that you've got that track record. So when you put this practice up for sale within the next 10 years, it's a very attractive peak-performing practice. The other thing I want you to realize is that we only do a limited number of practices per year. Could you imagine having 1,000 new patients a year? 1,000 new? No, there's no way. So you want to take. I am like you, where you want to have consistent growth that is not destructive but constructive, and we take our time and make sure that we pay attention to every individual office. My invitation to you, I realize that everybody in this webinar is not in the same place in their career. So when you're exiting this webinar, please indicate if you'd like to have a private conversation between you and one of my experts. I'll have you know that there is no obligation. It's just if you want to exchange information and you're thinking about this, by all means, give us a call and we can talk about putting a strategy together. And there's other trends in dentistry that I've found, and hence the reason why I'm talking about future webinar topics that I'll have Lauren send out in future invitations. Webinar 1 is have you prepared for personal emergency? How many dentists have a contingency plan if a personal health emergency where you couldn't practice or something fatal happened to you? And again, I can tell you story upon story, and you probably have colleagues and friends that this has happened to. So this is another must-see webinar. And the next one is if you are a younger dentist and you're just starting out in dentistry and the practice that you have purchased, you want to make that a high-income practice, that's what webinar 2 is going to be. I will help you understand how to use technology to bolster your income, and most importantly, I can help the buyer find the gold in the practice that the previous owner missed, because there are huge opportunities here. So I advise just to tell your friends, tune in, and you and your colleagues can tune in for free. My contact information is there. Christian Johnson and Tracy Thiessen are my two experts that would be happy to speak with you.